You are welcome to the second part of this lesson. Today, I will be teaching you sermon outline or skeleton. But before we move on, if today is your first time of watching my channel, my name is Alaba Oladejo. I will be opening your understandings to the knowledge needed for your career, spiritual, and personal growth. So, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also share with others so that they can also benefit. Also, go down, you will find the links to the first video. Now, let's move on to today's business. Sermon outline or skeleton. Consider it from this perspective of a body. Look at the function of a skeleton to the body and also the structures you see around you. Consider it if there's nothing like skeleton or a support to any structure. Will the structure stand? Will there be any shape to the body without a skeleton? Now, look at a sermon like that too. When you are preparing a sermon and there's no skeleton, there is nothing like a support or your sermon has no shape. But when there is a skeleton, you will see that the sermon will be going smoothly. Even the person that is presenting will not have any problem. Now, this is the first point where sermonal always miss. They don't know how to prepare a good outline to the sermon. That's why they will just be writing and just be saying anything. There will not be any place to demarcate or divide their sermon into points. Don't forget, in the previous video, we said there are different kinds of sermon. If you are just watching my channel, go down to the description below. You will find the link there. We said there are different kinds of sermon and different ways of preparing the outline. Once you know these things, I bet you have known the structure of a sermon. Preparing any sermon won't be a problem to you. What are the different kinds of sermon that you have? In the previous video, we mentioned that we have different kinds of sermon. The first one is 1. Topical sermon. 2. We have textual. We have 3. We have paragraphical. And the last one is expository. These are the kinds of sermon that we have, and we are now going to prepare some skeleton to each of them. Once you know that, preparing sermon or giving anybody a complete sermon will not be a problem. Even a sermon you are going to prepare in just 5 minutes, it may be difficult for the presenter to finish it in an hour. Now, let's start with the topical sermon. How do we prepare an outline to a topical sermon? 1. Topical sermon. If you still remember, we said when we are discussing an outline or skeleton, it is divided into 3 parts majorly. That is, we have 1, we have the head, we have 2, we have the body, and 3, we have the conclusion. As far as sermon is concerned, these 3 parts are very important. Although there are still some things under them, but these 3 parts is the first thing you should know. Once you can divide your sermon into these 3 parts, you have already finished your sermon. Now, when we are now talking about topical sermon, according to the definition we gave, we said topical sermon comes in form of phrases. When you see a sermon or anybody give you any topic, and the topic is now a phrase, like let's say 1, let's say knowledge, like 2, sin, 3, let's say the woman at the well. Those are examples of phrases. Now, once you know this, you have known that this is a topical sermon. How do you now prepare the outline? When you are preparing the outline of a topical sermon, the head includes 1, head. It includes the topic. You are going to start with the topic. 2, text. That's the next thing. 3, we are now going to do your introduction. Or if there's a purpose, and there must always be a purpose of delivering or preparing a sermon, you can include your purpose here. Purpose. That makes it 4 things under edge of a sermon, of a topical sermon. You are going to start with the topic, the next one will be the text, the one that will follow will be purpose, and the last one introduction. After that, you will now go to the body. The body is where you are going to include some relative pronouns. Those relative pronouns are those ones that will divide your sermon into points. They will prevent you from being a slave to that sermon. In fact, I don't think if you have seen somebody that just comes to the front and preparing sermon without holding anything, we say, wow, how is this person doing it? It is because the person has mastered all these outlines. When it comes to the body of his outline, he has mastered how to divide them into points. So the lifting offhand won't be a problem. Now, under the body of a sermon, you will ask some questions. It includes relative pronouns like who, what, why, when, to whom, and so on. Those are relative pronouns that are included under the body of a sermon. Now, the last part will now be conclusion. After the conclusion, you can do anything. Probably you pray, probably you tell a story just to round off your sermon. Now, let's pick an example. Let's say we want to talk about knowledge. You must know that it is a topical sermon. Now, knowledge, it comes with topic. Knowledge. This is the topic. What we follow is text. Here, which text can we pick from the scripture? My people perish for lack of knowledge. Okay, let's say Hosea 4:6. And now, purpose. To show, mind you, to show why it is important to have God's knowledge. It may be anything, or to show the importance of knowledge, or to show why God demands knowledge, or to show why God told his people that they perish because they don't have knowledge. You can see anything depending on the area you are coming from. Now, after that introduction, as a beginner, you can start your introduction by defining your topic, like saying, what is knowledge? Okay, that's under the introduction. You will now say, knowledge. 1. Knowledge is lack of fear of God. You put your quote there. After it, you can put Proverbs 1:7, where the Bible says, fear of God is the beginning of knowledge. If you also check any dictionary, you say, let's say like an English dictionary, like knowledge is having an awareness of something. You will reference the dictionary. Let's say dictionary. Another point you can say, knowledge is opposite of ignorance. That's how to do the introduction. Not that you are just, once you write this, you just started writing and be writing. You will be a slave to the sermon. Once you can divide it into points like this, you have finished everything you are doing. Your sermon will make sense. It will be meaningful. Even if you are not the one presenting it, the person you give this to will be happy. We know what to do and where to go. Now, after that, You now go to the body. Mind you, this is the head. After that, you go to the body. Mind you, I said in the body, it includes some relatives pronoun. You will ask questions regarding this, and it has to do with your perspective, your point, what you want to teach your audience. Although, under the introduction, you must have include what you really want to do. Some people among your audience must have known where you are heading to. Now, under the body, we have used what? That is, what is knowledge under the introduction as a beginner. If not as a beginner, you must have some reasons to use as your introduction. Probably you are coming from somewhere or something happens to anybody. You use that story, you include it. Or you choose one character in the scripture where that person behaved foolishly. So when it comes to the body, you are not going to divide it. Why is knowledge important? Comma. You will still put your point there. Why is knowledge important? Because God commanded it. 2. Because without knowledge, we cannot be successful. How many reasons you have? When you can think deeply, you will have points. And after that, this is A. These are the points under it. You will still pick another one. Who should have knowledge? B. Who should have knowledge? You still have your points there. You can say first, everyone. 2, you can say the people of God. You can also say Christians, depending on your audience. Now, you can still pick another point. How can we have knowledge? That is C. How can we have knowledge? You can say 1, by reading the scripture. You can say 2, by reading sacred books. 3, by being obedient to God. That's how you divide your sermon into points. That's that about the body. Let's start there. You can still say, to whom did God commanded knowledge? You can still say, why should we be the major people to have knowledge? Those are points you can have. Then you will now go to conclusion. Your conclusion can now be, okay, now, brethren or friends or whatever you call it, family. Hope we've now seen why it is important to have knowledge. Or hope we've now seen why God said his people perish because they did not have knowledge. Now let us strive to have the knowledge of God. Everybody will understand you. In fact, they will be happy after your sermon. And let me tell you the importance of this. Let's assume you were given like 5 minutes, 30 minutes. You won't exceed that minute because you have divided your sermon into points. You know that probably because of the time they give you, you pick 1 point here, you pick 1 here, you pick 1 here. You summarize your sermon. Within 5 minutes, you finish your sermon. They will say, wow, this person knows how to manage time. So it won't be like you are just a novice. That is that for that. Let's go to the second point. Textual sermon. Textual. as the name simply denotes, textual, that is text. From the first video, we said it is the kind of sermon whose title or topics come in form of clauses. You know what we mean by clause? Any sentence that involves faith. When there is a faith in any sentence or in a word, that is a clause. For example, increase our knowledge. Increase is a faith. That's an example of a faith. Satan, depart from me. Depart, that's a faith. That's an example of a clause. Now, when you now want to prepare a textual sermon, its own outline will start with the text, not the topic this time around. You mean that from that text, that is where you are bringing your topic or title. Now, for example, let's say under the head of a textual sermon now, you start with text. After it will now be your topic. Then it may be, if you still have purpose. After that, you can now go to introduction. Under the body, you can include those relative pronouns under the body, like whom, who, to whom, what, why, how, etc. And then to your conclusion. Example of that, let's pick 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 15, whereby the scripture says, "Be diligent to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." In the previous video, probably I say this text also, and I divide that text into 3 titles or topics. From this only text, I can bring out 3 topics from it. Number 1 will be diligent to show yourself approved unto God, right? Or to God. Number 2 will be a workman that need not to be ashamed. The last part will be rightly dividing the word of truth. Have you seen? Those are textual titles or topics you can bring out. They all include faith, and they are titles you bring out of a text. Now, how do you start let's pick one. Let's say we pick the diligence to show yourself approved unto God. Let's now rub the rest. Now the topic we pick is the diligence to show yourself approved. And so, note that there are still some words after it. That's why you are going to include this. This indicates continuation, and you are going to put it as a quote. Then you will go to purpose, to show why to be diligent. Mind you, in your conclusion or in the body of your sermon, whether textual or topical, once you include your purpose, the purpose to give your last point. Your purpose must reflect on your conclusion. That is, as you put your purpose, you said to show why to be diligent. That must be your last point under the body. That is, in your body, the last point in your body will now be, why should we be diligent? Because that is exactly what you want to show. That is the particularly or the main view or your perspective. What the reason behind your sermon? That is what you want to tell us. It should be the last point you are going to tell us under your sermon, so that your sermon will make sense. People will now understand. But if you put why should we be diligent as your first point under the body, your sermon will make sense. Once you state that, the rest are nonsense. So you must be careful. That same thing applies to the topical sermon. You say, under the topic we pick, knowledge. Under the purpose, we say, why should we have the knowledge of God? That's why we should have the knowledge of God should be the last point under the body. When you are dividing it, you have choose who should have knowledge, to whom did God say they should have knowledge, and how can we have knowledge? The last point should be, why should we have the knowledge of God according to the purpose you stated under the head of your sermon? That's how it is to every kind of sermon. You must be mindful of that. Now, you will now go to your introduction. Your introduction, you can just tell a story of something that happens to somebody when he did not know, when he's not aware, when he's not diligent to God, or something that happens to a preacher or a leader when he didn't have the knowledge of God, when he's not diligent to God, when he's not diligent with the work he's doing. You will have a story to tell. You will include that story. Now, you will go to the body. Under the body, you will now include all these relative pronouns. You can now say, what do we mean by being diligent? You can also say, what do we mean by being approved? You will define all these ones. What do we mean by diligent? You will make sure you find a quote, a text, or something to support it. You are not going to write. Once you say, what do we mean by being diligent? You can say by being hard work. Or being careful and endurance. So you will make sure that you have a quote or a text after it. You are not going to write story. That is a sermon skeleton. You are not going to write story. Now, you can now still say, what do we mean by being approved? You can say, okay, approved means in another way, like being certified. When Jesus was saying, sanctify them by their word, for their word is truth. You can pick that. John 17, see verse 7. You can check that. You can pick it. Okay, we put the text after it. There's another one. Sanctify, being devoted. Those are the meaning of being approved or being diligent. We added all those things. You can still say, what is the relationship of being diligent and being approved? You can now say, okay, being diligent and being approved to God is a commandment. It's a commandment. If you are not diligent, you cannot be approved. Both of them goes hand in hand. You state the points. Now, that's how you are going to put them into points. Break everything into points, and you are going to state a particular quote or text, so that your sermon will make sense. If somebody is going to present it, he may not be able to cover it under 5 hours. So, but you that you are preparing an outline, you must know all these things. It must be included. Now, after that, you will now go to conclusion. But mind you, the last point under the body, as I've said, must relate to the purpose of your sermon. That is why we should be, to show why we should be diligent. We should be diligent, or why to be diligent. Okay, the last point will now be, why should we now be diligent? You are now going to state, 1, in order not to perish, in order to be approved by God. 2, in order to be a good leader. 3, and those points you are going to put your text. If you are going to say, in order to be a good leader, Paul says something related to that to Timothy. When you check the book of Timothy, Probably 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 14 to 15. When you check that, or from 13, when you said, in order not to lead, you can still say, in order not to lead the people of God astray, in order not to make mistake. Those are the things you can include, or in order not to perish. Because once you are not approved by God, it means you have perished. Those are the things you can include. Then you go to your conclusion, you conclude your sermon. Oh, brethren, hope you have now seen why we should be diligent according to your purpose. This is all about topical and textual sermon. In the next video, we are going to discuss biographical and expository sermon. Therefore, make sure you turn on your notification so that you will be notified immediately I post a new video. Also, if this video is beneficial to you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and also share with others so that they can also benefit. I would like to see you in another day. Thank you so much for watching. May God bless.